I'd like to start with you, very small, brief booklet. So we have this little booklet here, Al-Mahd lil-Qarib al-Ahd. It means the cradle for the new Muslims. You know, the cradle is where the baby sleeps. So this is just for the beginner. That new Muslim was just a baby in the religion. So basically, what we're dealing with here, Yani, the scenario that we want to address here or tackle here is, what do you do if you have someone to teach, Yani, the basics? What do you do? How do you do that? What do you cover? What do you not cover? So we have here something very brief to give you some important pointers for teaching a new Muslim or anyone who's just learning as if he's a new Muslim. I'm not going to go into too many details here. I'm just going to try to stick to the text. So all of what we have right here, if you could cover all of this in one day, you're going to cover all of what we're going to cover now in one day, if you're able to. If not, maybe 2 days. So this is designed really to teach a person in 2 days. So the assumption here is that you have his time and you have his attention. Because sometimes you're teaching a person who's in a rush, or you're in a rush, or the situation is just not conducive. Too much distraction, too many people around, etc., etc. So you have to do something quick. And other times you're sitting in the masjid or the musalla, and then comes in a new person. Now you're going to teach this person. Yes, even you, lowly one who doesn't believe in yourself, and you think you're not qualified, you're going to have to teach somebody some of the basics, inshallah. So let's take a look at this table of contents here. It says here, session 1, the basic creed. So as you already know, you're going to start by teaching a person the basic belief. You're not going to start by teaching the person, this is how you cover, and this is haram to eat, and this is haram too, and this one also is haram, and that's haram. Don't do that too. And when we say basic here, it means keeping it simple, very simple. And I remind myself, you know me, I'm a person who likes to go into details. So when I talk to someone, I have to, if this one's just a beginner, I have to speak simply. So first thing you're going to do is teach this person the attributes of Allah, which we're going to go over. Here, important pointers about some of the attributes. These are things that you as the teacher, you're going to keep them in mind. You might need to give them to that one who's learning from you. Some important pointers. And then after you teach this person about the attributes of Allah, you're going to teach this person about the prophets and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the least, if you don't have a lot of time, you're just going to teach this person about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, once you've taught this person the belief in Allah and the belief in the prophets, and how long does that take? That's going to take you about 15-20 minutes. That's a good, decent lesson about the basics of belief. Like 12 minutes to talk about Allah and 8 minutes to talk about his messenger, for example, something like that. So basics, give this person the right belief. Then after you taught this person those basics of belief, this person needs to pray, which means this person also needs to make purification. So you're going to have to teach this person about ghusl and wudu and istinja. And you might have to tell this person about removing filth. Maybe. Removing filth might be something you could skip for the moment and then teach that person later. And you're going to teach this person the basic prayer Then we have some important cases related to the prayer so that you can help this new Muslim. Then second session, if this is not the first session here, then let's say that person came back the next day. Alhamdulillah, very nice to see that one. You're going to, for example, take an appointment with that one. If you're a very diligent one, you're going to get that person's phone number and you're going to like call that one and make sure. Some people are different there. Some people take more care than others. Some people are more concerned about others than others are. So if you can do that without being overbearing or something, you're going to get the person's number, maybe give them a heads up. Okay, I'm going to give you a call just to make sure everything's good. Okay, all right, no problem. Just expect my call, inshallah. Then you're going to remind that person, we have a lesson today, yeah? Okay, inshallah, I'll see you there. So now, second session, what are you going to teach this person? You want to teach them more, what? Basics of belief. More basics of belief, like judgment day, and resurrection, and the book of deeds, and those things, and paradise and hell. And you want to teach this person basics of blasphemy so they can protect themselves, or protect him or herself. And also, you want to tell this person, if you can, some of the obligations of the heart and some of the sins of the various organs, so that that person can leave you and have the means to protect himself from not only blasphemy, but also from some of the more likely sins. So we're not going to go into lots of details here. This is much less than the summary of obligatory knowledge. This is a presentation of immediate knowledge. Immediate knowledge. Immediate knowledge is more specific than the personal obligatory knowledge. Because immediate knowledge is the personal obligatory knowledge that you need now without delay. And then there's still some personal obligatory knowledge that once you got that immediate knowledge out of the way, there's still some more you want to get quick. Yani it's obligatory, get it, and then you'll have, that person who acquired that knowledge would have some breathing room and would be able to protect himself. Then we have some last issues, so we'll see what we have there. So let's start. Introduction. Part of the obligatory knowledge is what is called the immediate knowledge. Ilmul hal, we just talked about that. It is more specific than all of the necessary religious knowledge contained in the summary. So, for example, you might teach a person this booklet who's new, and then when you finish that with that person, then you say, okay, now we're going to start the summary of obligatory knowledge. So we're going to repeat some of this information and then go into further detail. The immediate knowledge is the knowledge that one needs for the immediate obedience to Allah. In this brief document, we shall address the needs of a person who just embraced Islam within the hour, for instance. Such a person must immediately learn certain matters of belief and immediately learn about matters of purification and prayer. So to pray before the exiting of the prayer time, they're not excused to pray late. They're just becoming a Muslim is not an excuse to pray late. So you have to keep that in mind. You might even, depending on the time, you might even have to get this person praying first and then teach him. If the prayer time is going to go out, you might need to get this person to do his ghusl and everything, teach him the prayer, pray with that person, and then now once the prayer is done, then you can sit and relax and teach them the belief. But if you have enough time, you're going to teach them the belief first and then pray with them. They must also learn about some of the sins because it is obligatory to refrain from them immediately. Session 1, the basic creed. So this session 1, like we said, what's that? That's you sitting in the masjid or the musalla. Maybe you're minding your business, reciting Quran or something. And then someone new comes in, looking around. and, you know, fresh off of the streets. So then what are you going to do? Teach this one. Session 1, the basic creed. The most important knowledge is that of the creed. One must immediately know about Allah and his messenger. So you're going to teach the person the attributes of Allah. It is obligatory to know 13 attributes among the countless attributes of Allah. He has to know 13 attributes. He doesn't have to memorize them. He doesn't have to memorize their exact names. You teach this person, let him hear this information. You're going to say Allah exists, Allah has no beginning, Allah has no end, Allah has no similar, Allah has no partner. You don't have to now make sure you memorize everything you say. And you don't have to count those attributes out and say 1, existence, 2, such and such, 3, such. You don't have to. You might. You don't even have to say to this person, Allah has 13 attributes among the countless attributes that are obligatory to know. You might say to the person, now let's learn. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Correct your intentions. So Allah, he's attributed with existence. He has existence without a beginning. He has existence without an end, etc. So they are existence. Allah is a self. So we're going to explain here. So we're going to try to keep this explanation very brief here. You might say this to a person you're teaching, or you might say some of it. Most important is you want this person's obligation to be fulfilled. So Allah is a self attributed with attributes. He is a self attributed, yani a self that is attributed with attributes. You might say that, or you might not say that. You might just say Allah exists. Here's the thing, brothers and sisters. I don't want to digress too much here, but some people have a problem, which is that you say a clear word to them, but they don't understand what you're saying to them. Even though what you said is clear, they don't understand what you're saying to them for some reason. May Allah protect us. So, for example, you might say to someone, Allah exists. Usually, that's clear, usually. Maybe somebody won't understand. So, be mindful there. Be careful. Don't be the one. Don't be that one who doesn't understand. Existence. Allah has a self attributed with attributes. His self is his reality and not a body. His self is his reality and not a body. You don't have to say that to a person. Really, this here is for you to teach another person. These are pointers for you. These are things for you to say, or maybe not say. Depends on who you're dealing with. Maybe you're dealing with someone who's very clever and you want to give them very good, refined lessons so they understand. So you say all this. Maybe you're dealing with someone who's not so clever, so you just need to keep it very rudimentary, very easy. The teacher must look into his audience, whether it's one person or more than one, and then address the audience, his audience, as they understand. The selves of the creations are their bodies. So when we say Allah has a self, doesn't mean he's a body. Allah's existence is uncreated. That's an easy one. Allah exists. His existence is uncreated. And hence it is not physical. His existence is not a physical one. That's a clear statement. Maybe someone would say, what does that mean? And then you tell them, he exists without a place and without a space and without directions or time. That's what we mean. We say his existence is not physical because he's not created. And is there a proof? Yes. Very important when you're dealing with someone is to give them the evidence. The existence of the world is proof for the existence of its creator. For every doing must have a doer. Everything that has a beginning needs someone to make it begin. So right there, what you told that new Muslim or new learner, Allah exists. He exists. His existence is uncreated. So he exists without a place or space. And the existence of this world proves the existence of its creator. Eternity. Allah exists without a beginning. Because had he been created, he would need a creator. That's easy. And hence Godhood would be invalid for him. You don't even have to say that part. You can just say Allah has no beginning, because if he had a beginning, he would need a creator. That's simple. And then any normal person would say, yeah. But since the creation's occurrence is confirmed by senses and natural disposition, the creator's existence, and more specifically, his beginningless existence, is confirmed. So the way that's worded there seems a little bit, for me, now that I'm looking at it, it looks a little bit technical there. But when you give that back to someone, you're going to give it to them simple and easy. But don't treat him like he's stupid. Don't treat the person like he's stupid. You're going to treat that person like that person's an intelligent Muslim. And then if it becomes clear for you that he's stupid, then you make it easier. Yeah, stupid's not the nicest word, but it's true sometimes. So if you found that he's a little bit slow, a little bit dense, then you're going to keep it easy. But don't approach people like that. That's my advice to you. Don't approach people that they're dumb and they don't understand things. Everlastingness. Allah exists without a beginning, and hence he must exist without an end. That's easy. What's argument for that mental proof? Because whatever comes to an end must have a beginning. Whatever has a beginning or an end is bound by time, and whatever is bound by time is an occurrence or a creation. You don't even have to say all of that. That's 2 or 3 sentences there. You could say that in one sentence, for example. Independence. Allah is free of need. For whoever is in need is not God. That's very easy. Oneness. One God is sufficient for the management of the creation. Thus, another creator is not needed. That's easy. One God, even if you just said, one God is enough for the world. That's very easy, clear statement for anyone to understand. So one God is sufficient for the management of the creation. Thus, another creator is not needed. There's no need for 2 gods. And whoever is needless and useless is not God. Dissimilarity. Allah does not resemble the creation. Resemble, if you're a teacher, then have synonyms that helps you teach, inshallah, meaning so that you can use alternative words. Just now, the person asked a question, what is that? What does such and such mean? So I said, means such and such. Now you got 2 words. The more words you make me add, then I'm going to be more and more concerned about you. That's not for you who asked, that's general. That's how I see it. So have synonyms so that you can use several words to help the person understand. Dissimilarity, Allah does not resemble the creation. And he's not like the creation. So that might be enough for you. But here's more. He does not resemble the dense, tangible entities, yani, the things that you can grab in your hands. He's not like something that you can grab in your hand, like rocks and trees and people. Nor does he resemble the subtle, intangible entities, or you can say, nor is he like something that you can't grab in your hand. So you can say it an easy way, like light and darkness, or the air. He does not have the characteristics of created things like motion, stillness, contact, or separation. He doesn't move, and he's not still. Personally, when I've taught people about the attribute of dissimilarity for Allah, I make it a point to say to the person, Allah is not inside and he's not outside of anything. And he's not moving and he's not still. And he's not in contact with anything. And he's not separate from something. He's not big and he's not small. And he's not close and he's not far. When you do like that, then you will erase for that person all imagination. Which attribute do you tend to explain the longest? That's going to be usually, from my experience, the dissimilarity, the attribute of dissimilarity, and the attribute of speech. For dissimilarity, because you want to explain to the person, I want to explain to the person clearly something that erases all imagination, clearly, that it's very clear for this person that it's impossible for him to conceive Allah. It's one thing for me to say to him, Allah is not like anything. If he just hears those words, okay. It's another thing, though, when you just elaborate a little more to really actually remove his imagination. So I would say to that person, Allah is not like anything. He's not inside of anything or outside of anything, because then he would be a body. And he's not moving and he's not still, because either way he would be a body. And he's not touching something and he's not disconnected from anything. And he's not big and he's not small and he's not close and he's not far. And I would say like this, negating opposites, negating opposites, negating opposites. All of that is so that while that person's listening to me, anything that he's imagining, that he might even try to imagine, I'll be dismantling it. By the time I finish explaining that to him, then he understands that Allah does not resemble anything. He cannot be imagined. So that one, sometime for me, takes some few more minutes than others. And also the attribute of speech, as we're going to see, because I usually would want this person to understand that Allah has an attribute called speech, but also Allah revealed the Quran, because it's very important to believe in the Quran and to understand what the Quran is. Allah revealed the Quran, and this Quran refers to his uncreated speech. So that talk there also takes a few more minutes than other things. So Allah must be alive, as proven by the existence of the creation, or because the creation exists. It's very simple for a commoner. Because the one who creates must have power and will and knowledge, and whoever has power, will, and knowledge must be alive. However, Allah is alive without a body or soul. That part's important, though, here. This part's important. He's alive without a body or a soul. And he does not die. So saying Allah is alive, and saying because the creation exists, and saying his life is without a body or a soul and he does not die, all of that's very important. Power. Allah makes things come into existence and go out of existence. That's easy. He said, power, Allah creates by his power. You might want to explain what creates mean, or maybe not. If you say Allah creates with his power, that might be just enough. You could add, creating means to bring existence from non-existence. You could, but you might not have to. In Arabic language, a standard of eloquence in Arabic language is the ability to say little but mean a lot. The ability to say little and mean a lot. So that's a good thing to practice. Say as little as you can while conveying much meaning. And don't talk a lot. Just because you're talking a lot doesn't mean you're saying a lot. So power, Allah makes things come into existence and go out of existence, or Allah creates. He is exclusively the one who can make entities exist. He's the only one who can create. So can I repeat? يعني, a standard in Arabic language for eloquence, having eloquent speech, one standard to make your speech eloquent is saying a little bit, but meaning a lot. So that's a good thing to practice there. If you can say a little bit of words, but mean a lot of things by that. It's a good thing to practice. You try that. When you talk to someone, just say something and then stop. Sometimes when you talk to someone, not you, I mean, sometimes someone talks to someone. And so they keep talking and talking and talking and talking. I don't know what, until I guess the person shakes his head or something. What I suggest you do when you talk to someone is say what you want to say. You have a meaning in your heart, something you want to say. Say it in as few words as possible, and then period. Just say, and then stop talking. Don't assume the person didn't understand you. It will become clear if they understood you when they respond. Say what you want to say, and then stop. Then they're going to respond to you. And they might say, what do you mean? So then you know you need to say more. Or they might say, okay, I got it. And then so you continue.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can I say
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. Tell you an experience of mine. Sometimes I speak to some people and teach them something, and I'm saying a little at first, then the people just be stuck. You ever get the people be stuck and they have a baffled look on their face? Mm-hmm. Then I start speaking more. What should I do?
If it were me, I will say what I want to say. I will be silent. If they have a baffled look on their face, I will just wait. Maybe they need to just process what you said. I will wait and I'll see what they do. I'll give them a moment. I won't say anything, inshallah. And I'll just see what they do. How do they react? Okay. So they might say, and they might take a moment and say, oh, okay, I got it. And then you keep going. Or they might, or something else. You might have to repeat yourself. Ameen Wafiq. Or they might not say anything. Let's say he doesn't say anything and the baffled look on his face doesn't go away. So then I might just repeat myself with the same words or with different words. Or I might ask, is that clear? Or something like that. But I would say, though, one of the very good things to do in most situations is just say whatever it is you want to say from beginning to end and then stop. And don't continue to talk. You're adding more and more words is not necessarily going to make a person understand what you're saying. And among the things that, besides my experience that I'm telling you, that makes me understand this, what I'm telling you, is that because I get a lot of questions. And sometimes a person will be asking me a question and I try to let a person continue his question, finish his question and not interrupt him, say everything he wants to say, complete his thought, and then let me respond. That's what I usually try to do with some people. What would they do if they're asking? They're asking and then they said their question, but they didn't stop talking yet. And then they might wind up saying their question 2 times, 3 times, 4 times in one breath. And when you just keep talking and talking, that's not necessarily going to make what you're saying clearer. So say something and then stop. And then see how the person reacts and then go from there. So power. Allah makes things come into existence and go out of existence, or he creates. He is exclusively, meaning the only, he is exclusively the one, the only one who can make entities exist. And he's the only one who can create anything. That's an easy statement. He can make something from nothing. That's what creating means. Without tools or effort. You could add that part. He creates without tools and without effort. But there's a good chance a person will still understand if you don't say that. You just say Allah creates. There's a very good chance a person will understand that. And he has the power to make those things vanish. Will. Allah specifies his creations with his will. So also another thing, if you're teaching someone anything, if you're teaching anything, any field, be mindful that you don't define what you're saying with the same word. Be mindful there. If I say will means Allah does whatever he wills. So that's not going to help the one who doesn't know what I'm saying in the first place. So will, Allah specifies his creation with his will. Ani, that word specify there, that's the explanatory word for will. His will is his attribute by which he specifies. He gives them some traits that they could have instead of other traits that they could have, or you could say he makes things one way or another. Also, he is not forced. That's another meaning of saying he has will. He's not forced. He creates by his choice, which is his will. His choice is his will. Knowledge. Allah knows, you could say in easy words, Allah knows everything. That's simple. People understand that. The kafir understands that. Before I became a Muslim, I knew what it meant to say God knows everything. Even without hearing elaboration, I didn't need someone to tell me he knows what was and what is and what shall be, and he knows all about himself, and he knows all about the creations. Yani, I never heard those details, and I wouldn't have been able to say those details without learning. But deep in my heart, I just knew that God knows everything. So you can keep those things simple for a person. Allah knows what exists and what does not exist. He knows what was, what is, and shall be, and what shall not be, and every detail of how it would be had it been. But sometimes I do say these. Often I say all of this for a person who's learning. Allah knows what was and what is and what shall be, and he knows what won't be, and he knows how it would be if it would be. But you don't have to say all of that. And especially if the person you're talking to doesn't think like that. Mind doesn't go technical like that. Then you'll just keep it simple. He knows his own reality. Yani, he knows about himself. His self is his reality. And he knows the realities of his attributes. And no one knows that but him. No prophet and no angel. I would add for a person who's learning, only Allah knows the reality of his self, and no prophet knows that, and no angel knows that. Hearing, Allah hears everything that exists, but without ears, because he is not an entity, meaning he's not a body. Deafness is deficiency, and deficiency is impossible to be an attribute of the Creator. Sight. Allah sees everything that exists, but without eyes. Because he is not a body, blindness is deficiency, and deficiency is impossible to be an attribute of the Creator. Just repeated ourselves there. Speech. Allah speaks without letters, sounds, or language, because he is not a body. He orders, forbids, promises, threatens, informs, and questions by this attribute. Also, that part, I would usually add that for a person or some of it. So that's part of why talking about the attribute of speech also sometimes takes a few more minutes talking about other attributes. So what I said to you about saying as much as you need to say and then being silent. Another way to say that is don't be long-winded. Don't be long-winded. Okay? And you might have a habit of that. Some people have a habit of that. I'll tell you, as someone who gets questions, also, yeah, I'll put the link for you. Someone who gets questions, sometimes it's hard on me when someone takes a long time to ask this question. Long time. At the end of the day, the question is like 5 words, but it took him like 5 minutes to ask the question. May Allah protect us. Okay. Let's look at these important pointers here. So we just covered the 13 attributes. Right now in our lesson, that took us about an hour with some interruptions, some questions that came and some technical difficulties. But all these 13 attributes that we just went over, if you're teaching a new person, you don't want to take more than 10 or 15 minutes to teach those attributes. Important pointers about some of the attributes. 1, all of his attributes have no beginning or end. You might say that. That's an important point. I have 13 attributes. Each one of them has no beginning and each one of them has no end. So one method is to say Allah has the beginningless, endless knowledge. Allah has the beginningless, endless power. Allah has the beginningless, endless will. Allah has the beginningless, endless speech. Allah. Or another way is to say it one time, somewhere where it fits. Like here, we ran through all the attributes and then we said a statement that includes all of them. That's one pointer. 2, concerning his dissimilarity, his non-resemblance to the creation, one must be warned of the likeners, the mushabbiha, yani the Wahhabis. Very important. If you're teaching a new person, you definitely want to warn this person from the Wahhabis because they have online presence, and depending on where you are, especially in some urban areas, they might have presence in the city. Philadelphia, for example, we have enough Wahhabis for all of the universe. And also other places are like that. So you're teaching that person now. That person, is so easy that person just has a friend who's a Wahhabi, though. He thought all this time his friend's a Muslim. Now he became a Muslim. He can't wait to go talk to his friend and tell him, hey, man, I became a Muslim too. And guess what? I just learned from these really nice people who taught me that Allah exists without a place. So you want to teach him, warn him from the Wahhabis. Or else, if you don't, there's a good chance that some Wahhabi is going to undermine everything you did with that person. You say, no, don't listen to those people, especially if he knows that one and he trusts that one. You might tell him, you never know, maybe even some of your friends might be Wahhabi, so be careful. This is a wrong belief. And so then if you're going to warn them about Wahhabis, they're going to be briefly informed about mutashabih ayahs of the Quran. Why that's also very important, because that person, new Muslim's going to want to look into a translation of the Quran. He might be eager to open up translations and read in there. So you need to warn him out of fear of him meeting a Wahhabi or reading a mistranslation. It must also be clarified that Allah exists without a place or direction. That's also part of what makes talking about dissimilarity a little bit lengthier, because you want to squeeze in there for the person that Allah exists without a place. Concerning his hearing and sight, it must be clarified that they are not eyes or ears. Allah does not have a body or any bodily attributes. That should be clear throughout your discussion. Concerning his will and power, it must be clarified that Allah is the creator of what? Everything, including the evil and including the deeds of the slaves. Now, are you going to go into that? It's important. It is important. Now, we live in a time where our greatest threat is comparing God to the creations, not denying that God created everything. In other times, in other places, the Muslims had to face Mu'tazila. So their issue was to clarify for the people that Allah is the creator of everything, including the evil and including the deeds of the slaves, and destiny is confirmed. So we don't have to focus there because that's not a prominent issue in our time now. It's still very important though. And it's not far-fetched that some person might slip and think that Allah does not create evil. Or a person might slip and think that Allah doesn't create your voluntary deeds. I even remember when I first became a Muslim, and I remember one of our brothers, Brother Khalid, there's many Khalids. May Allah have mercy on Brother Khalid. He was teaching me that Allah is the creator of my deeds. And he was teaching me also that I'm still accountable for what I do. And I didn't understand. I told him, he created all of my deeds? He said, yes. And I told him, and I'm accountable for what I do? He said, yes. I said, as if he creates my deeds, I'm not accountable? No. So that's somewhere where a person could be confused. So that's an important point there. And concerning his speech, several points need to be clarified. One is that his speech is not letters, sounds, or languages. You're going to say that from the beginning. And his speech is not letters or words or sounds or languages. Another is you might want to clarify for that person why you said, if you said during your lesson, you might say to that person, Allah said, and then you're going to say something created, right? You might say Allah said, and then you say something created. Like, laysa kamithlihi shay, that expression is created right there. And then after you say Allah said, and then you say something created, you're going to turn around and say Allah's speech is not created. So I never encountered anyone who got confused there, but that's a potential spot for confusion. So take care of that. And lastly, it must be clarified that he orders, forbids, promises and threatens, and questions and informs, but without his speech changing. Without his speech changing. Now, we didn't finish our first session. This new Muslim, well, we just now took an hour to explain these 13 attributes. You're going to explain those 13 attributes in 10 to 15 minutes tops. All of this, you're going to condense it. Or you might use this document, for example, and read it to the person. It is brief. But really, this is like assuming that you're just going off the top of your head. How to teach a new Muslim. What are you going to do? When you're in class, when you're in work, when you encounter a person on the train or on the street. Once I met a guy, I might have told you the story. I once met a guy out on the street. He's selling loose cigarettes. He asked me if I wanted to buy a Lucy from him, which I didn't. But I noticed that his mannerisms, I said, this guy, for a Lucy hustler, he seems kind of soft and humble, not aggressive at all. I think this guy's going to become a Muslim. And I talked to him right there, and he became a Muslim. And he didn't have a lot of time. When I say he didn't have a lot of time, it means he wasn't interested in standing there on the corner with me for a long time and not finish hustling his Lucy's. I can gather that from his body language. So I quickly told him the attributes of Allah. And I told him about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I told him that he needs to pray and take a ghusl. And I told him where he can pray. And maybe I was on my way also, had to do something. Told him where he could go to pray and learn. And I never saw him again. All of that discussion with that guy was probably about 20 minutes. 15, 20 minutes. So let's stop there. I was hoping we get further. I need to be patient. Subhanallah. You said, personally, in the beginning of my learning journey as a new Muslim, the concept that Allah creates both good and evil is something that really helped me. If this can help anyone else teaching someone new, a simple sentence, God creates everything, both good and evil. This was very profound for me. Ameen wa fikum. Ameen wa fikum. MashaAllah. Yes, that's nice. That's another thing too. You don't know what might actually be the profound thing for a person. A lot of times it's when you make a person understand that Allah doesn't resemble anything. Usually, in my experience, that's the most profound thing. When you make, for example, a person understand that Allah exists without a place. And when, for the first time, his intellect is freed from the shackles of his imagination. And he thought beyond his imagination. He conceived something that he couldn't imagine. And that's very profound. You said, how would you clarify now for a new Muslim what Brother Khalid explained for you? Okay, that's a good question. Basically, I think the easiest thing in my mind to say to a person is Allah has two types of creations. He has creations that choose and creations that don't choose. And from one perspective, I am like a tree or a pole or a wall or a rock. From one perspective, I'm similar to a rock. How so? Because the rock is created by Allah and I am created by Allah. We're both creations of Allah. What's the difference? The difference that Allah made me a different kind of creation, a choosing kind. He made me a choosing kind of creation. And my choice is his creation.
Oh, Shaykh.
Yes?
Do the Christians, this is a question about the Christian, do the Christians believe the devil rivals Allah?
They tend to.
God?
They tend to.
Okay.
Yani, that's not to say they're all agreeing about that, but yeah, it's a good chance you'll meet a Christian who he deems the devil God's opposite or God's nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, inshallah, hold on. And similar to that is just explaining qadar in itself. You say you have a heartbeat and you have a hand. You have voluntary moves and you have involuntary moves just in your same body. What's the similarity between the movement of your hand and the beating of your heart? The similarity is that Allah created both of them. What's the difference between the movement of your hand and the beating of your heart? One of those, Allah gave you a created control over it, and the other, he didn't give you any created control over it. All of that is the creation of Allah. What you have a choice to do and what you don't have a choice to do is all a creation of Allah. Any last question? Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.